Hi guys, welcome. I'm with champion jockey here, Zac Purton, and we're in his home, and we'll be talking with Nicole a little bit later. So thanks for having us, Zac.
No worries. Thanks for coming and seeing me.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm going to start off, Zac, first of all, with when you first came to Hong Kong. You were how old when you first came here?
I think I was 23.
23.
Yeah.
And you were fresh.
Yeah.
And young. And
well, sort of.
Yeah. And you came here with Nicole at the time?
I did, yeah.
That's amazing. And you want to tell me a little bit about how things were when you first got here?
I still remember the first day I arrived, and at that time the jockey club basically got you here, dumped you in the apartment and said, okay, you know, fend for yourself.
Right.
And I could see the race course here through the window, but I went downstairs and I couldn't work out how to get to the track.
Right.
As you know, there's sort of chicken wire fence all the way around here, and we've got the security guards and the security gates. And one of the security officers seen me walking around a little bit lost and asked where I needed to go, and I said, well, I need to go to the track, to the sand area. So he took me through the gate and took me down there, and I clearly remember walking through that tunnel to the sand area.
Gosh,
and all I could see were all these local Chinese people who I had no idea who they were, and I was like, oh my God, where am I? What have I done?
Right.
I didn't know. I briefly met David Hall in Melbourne when he was down there, but apart from that, I didn't know any trainer in Hong Kong. I didn't know any owner. There were a couple of jockeys here I knew, but I didn't see them. And Andreas Schutz at that time, he was like, you know, the Incredible Hulk hobbling along as he does, and he was laughing. He could see that I was lost, and he said, are you the new jockey? I said, yeah. I said, can you take me to the trainer's stand, because John Moore had reached out and said, when you arrive, come and see me. So I said, he's in the trainer's stand, I need to find him. So he took me up there, and yeah, but it was just that, I never forget that moment of just thinking, oh my God, where am I?
Yeah, because you didn't know anybody, right? I mean, it was just completely, I mean, you just left Australia. Was that your first time in Asia, or was it?
It was. I'd been to Japan once.
Right.
I went to Japan to play soccer when I was 14 or 15.
Oh, wow.
Apart from going to New Zealand, so they're the only two times I'd ever left Australia.
Right.
I'd never been to Hong Kong.
That's a huge cultural shock, and yeah, very different.
Yeah.
And how did you manage on a personal level when you first got here? Getting rides, getting to know people, finding your way around. Like how challenging was that for you? For both of you, actually, at the time.
It was really hard. So it was basically in the infancy of iPhones, and at that time Google Maps, they weren't out. It wasn't a thing. So we had the old Refidex to try and get around. So that was that created a few problems, because Nicole was co-pilot, meant to be telling me where to go, and we were missing quite a few turn-offs.
Oh
so
dear.
That was a little bit frustrating at the start. And at that time as well, we had the calling cards, or Nicole had a calling card to call back home.
Yeah, I remember.
So we've come a long way from there. But to get rides, I had a manager in Australia, and they basically handle everything. They liaise with the owners and trainers, and they book your race rides and your barrier trials. And I basically just turned up race day and rode the horses. But coming here was very different. So I used to sit here every day waiting for my phone to ring to get a ride, and it wasn't ringing. So I basically would pick up an odd ride here or an odd ride there, and I wasn't getting any opportunities at all. And it wasn't until the trainers started to tell me, and this was a few months in, that I need to send them messages, I need to ring them, I need to show them that I'm interested and keen and want to ride their horses, because every other jockey here is doing that. And why are they going to put me on over them when they're showing their interest and I'm not? So I had to wrap my head around that. Also, when I arrived, there were a lot of jockeys that were well established. They'd been here for 5, 10, 15 years. They had really good connections with the owners, really good connections with the trainers. They'd been very successful. They were the who's who of the world jockeys. We had Douglas White, we had Brett Preble, we had Olivier Deleuze, we had Gerard Mosse, we had Eric Saint-Martin.
That's a big group of guys there.
We had Danny Nikolic, we had Shane Dye, we had Anthony Delpeche, we had Glenn Boss, and Kevin Shea arrived at the same time as me. We had Felix Kutzi, and Darren Beedman arrived a couple of months, maybe 3 or 4 weeks after me. So why are they going to put on a jockey who they don't know, who's young, who they've never met, never seen before, hasn't proven themselves in Hong Kong? Why are they going to put him on over all these other jockeys that have been very successful, that they know, that they have the confidence
and are still working hard to get rides?
Still working hard to get rides. So I just come at a really difficult time. But I suppose what it did do was it taught me to work hard, to chase hard for those rides, to fight for everything. And then, you know, it's sort of carried through to where I am today. Whereas now when you arrive in Hong Kong, the Jockey Club has like a chaperone who's a manager who does your rides for the first 3 months. So he books all
I
the
had
rides.
no idea.
Yeah, he teaches you the rating system. He teaches you how everything works. He knows all the trainers, so he can parachute you into all the trainers to start with, and he knows which horses are the right ones to be on. So in that regard, you're sort of handed everything when you first arrive now. Sure, you still need to ride winners and you still need to
work
be
hard,
successful,
but not, yes.
But now you're getting your hand held when you first arrived. So it's completely different now to when I arrived.
And when you got here and, you know, the first couple of months passed, did you feel at any point that, God, what have I done? I've made a mistake coming here. Like, was that something that crossed your mind?
I didn't think I made a mistake because initially I wanted to come to Hong Kong. I didn't come here with a long-term view. I had a 6-month contract and I wanted to see out the 6 months because in my view, Hong Kong was the mecca of world racing. All the best jockeys in the world wanted to go to Hong Kong or were in Hong Kong. But what I noticed in Australia was every jockey that had left Hong Kong and come back to Australia went straight to the top. Like, they had the experience, they had the confidence, they had the business savvy sense, and they were the best jockeys. And I thought, okay, I'm at the top of the tree in Australia, but I want to be the best. So I want to go to Hong Kong, throw myself in the fire pit, see how I go, and then bring all that experience back, and then I'll be the number one jockey. But I come here, and although things were hard and things were difficult, I loved the racing. Right. I loved the culture. Really enjoyed the racing, loved the city, and although things were hard, and I did have that moment where I did want to go home, Nicole and I were in Phuket having a holiday, and I just looked at her across the table and I said, oh, I'm done. I said, I want, and it was that bad. I said, I never want to ride again. I said, I'm just done. Right. And she said, no, stick it out, you know, I believe in you, you can do it, blah, blah, blah. And anyway, I did, and luckily for me, at the end of my first season, Glenn Boss had a falling out with Ricky Yu.
Okay.
And Ricky come to me and he said, you know, do you want to ride my horses? And I said, well, I've got no one else to ride for. So I rode 10 winners for him in the last month of the season. And if you ride 10 winners in a month here, we only race for 10 months a year. So you do that 10 times, that's 100 winners in a season. There's only been 3 jockeys in history that have ever ridden 100 winners in a season. So to ride 10 winners in a month, you're flying, you're airborne. So I finished that season extremely well, and it gave me the confidence to come back the next season. But I come back the next season, and it was like what I'd done the season before meant nothing.
Nothing.
I was at the bottom having to work hard, scrap for rides, try and get opportunities again. So it was
like you were starting over.
I had to start over again. But fortunately, after sort of 2 or 3 months, things started to flow a little bit more, and then they have ever since. For the first 10 seasons I was here, I rode more winners the next season than I did the previous. So it was like
always
I was
growth.
just going up, 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 up for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's incredible. So I'm going to go back a little bit for when you were a little guy. Do you come from a horse racing family?
I don't. No. No one in my family is in horse racing or was in horse racing. I'm not sure where I got it from, but my parents, and I vaguely remember this when I was young, they would take me to the races and I'd run up and down the outside fence, and they would say if they turned around, I'd be in the parade ring underneath the horse's legs quite often. I had to keep an eye on me. I had a wooden horse that I'd go up the outside fence pretending I was in a race on. And there are photos of me when I was a baby, before I could even walk, lying on the back of a horse. Wow. And for as long as I can remember, I've always loved horses. My parents didn't have a lot of money, so if I found a friend that had a horse, I would always want to go to their house to ride their little Shetland pony or whatever else, and that's how I could ride the horses and get going. And I was always very athletic, always good at sport, and I was very small. So
and your parents, did they push you towards that when they realised that you had such an interest in it?
Yeah, they knew that I loved riding horses, right? And there was a jockey seminar on at Kempsey one day, which was an hour and a half away from Coffs Harbour, which was where we were living at the time. And it meant I could have the day off school. So I was like, yeah, of course I'll go to that.
Yeah.
And we went down there, and I was the smallest and lightest kid. At that time, I was 14 and a half, and I was 27 kilos.
Wow.
So I was
that
tiny.
is
So
very light.
to put that into context, Cash, who was 6 years old now, he's 20 kilos. So I was only a little bit
Heavier
bigger than him.
At 14.
At
and a half.
14. Yeah, so I was tiny. And then when I decided, they put me in a stable in Coffs Harbour with Trevor Hardy. So I walked in the stable and knew nothing about racing. So he taught me everything. Taught me about stable work, stable life. Went to the races. I lived with him during the school holidays. And then when I left school, I lived with him and his wife full time for a couple of years until I sort of started to progress on and ride in other areas. So he taught me everything. You know, I was too small to ride the racehorses on the track in track work. So I could only ride them down the beach or in the sand dunes behind the race course. And I had to go to the gym. I had to try and build up. I had to eat a lot more. So from the time I went from 14 and a half at 27 kilos, by the time I was 17, I was 50 kilos and I was having a problem with my weight. I had this massive growth
So you had
spurt.
a growth spurt.
At the same time as I was training and eating and bulking up, and I've had a weight problem ever since. So
Really? So you do struggle with your weight?
yeah, I do. Listen, like I'd say
most.
90% of the jockeys do. Yes. So I've just come back from holiday, of course. I ride at 120 pounds here in Hong Kong. That's my minimum, so 54 and a half kilos. And I've come back from holiday and I'm 132 pounds. So
Wow.
I've got a short.
But looking at you, it doesn't look like you've packed on any weight.
I've lost a couple of pounds already. I've lost the bloat already. I've been at track work, riding trials. I've been doing some exercise off the track as well. But you can't jump straight into it. Your body's not ready for it after having 5 weeks off. So you got to step by step get back into it until I'm nearly a week in now. So from Monday I can start pushing myself a little bit more. But everyone says I don't look a lot heavier.
No,
so
you don't.
it's my body. I get it around my belly. I get it in my face a little bit, but it sort of distributes through my body quite evenly. And disguises it a little bit. But,
A little bit better, yeah.
Yeah, it's not good when you get back and you get on the scales. It's
the worst feeling.
It's the worst
be a heavy
feeling.
It must be
like
really
when you're on holiday
Yeah.
and you feel bloated and you feel fat. I just dread that moment when I get back here and step on those scales for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you very scale driven though, or once you start racing, it's easy to sort of keep that weight where you need to be at about 120, or is it something that
It ebbs and flows a little bit because in
Right.
Hong Kong we need to socialise quite a bit. That's part of what we do. You need to have good relationships with the owners, and you got to celebrate the wins and celebrate the good moments. So I do go out for dinner with them, and I was on a plant-based diet. I went to a plant-based diet probably about 7 years ago, and I
Okay.
found that really helped because I was having trouble with my kidney stones and things like that as well. And my weight was really good, and I was for 3 years solid. I was 100% plant-based, and then I went away in an off-season, and we were with some friends, and I was like, oh, I'll have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and now I'm probably about 85% plant-based. So when we're at home, I control everything I do, but when we go out for dinner with owners,
you're open to eating?
I just open,
Right.
but I just have smaller portions, of course, and I know what my body can accept and what it can't, and what it will do for me. So it ebbs and flows a little bit, like every jockeys. We've got to dehydrate and waste every race meeting to get back to our weight. We've got to cut our food down, cut the fluids down, push ourselves in the hot suits, the sweat suits, running and exercising and things like that. So it does go up and down a little bit, but I get on the scales a minimum 3 times a day. So I get on them as soon as I wake up in the morning. I get on them after I come back from track work, and I'll get on them before I go to bed at night.
That's really, really disciplined. That's very disciplined.
I need to know exactly where my weight
you're
is.
at.
But I can tell, before I step on the scales, I will know within, half a pound what my weight's going to be.
That's incredible. Yeah. That's how in tune with your body you are right now.
When you're checking it 3 times a day, you're sort of staying on top of it as well. So I know what fluids, if I drink, my body will retain, and which ones sort of don't stick to my body as much, the same as food and things like that. So over a period of time, when you do it for as long as I've done it, it becomes second nature.
So you've been riding now a total of how many years, like professionally, since you've been?
So I rode my first winner in May of 2000 at a place called Armidale on a horse called Magic Zap, a grey horse. And he also brought me my second winner as well. So he holds a special place in my heart.
That's amazing, yeah.
So 23 years.
23 years. And you are now the big 40?
40, I know. I had the midlife crisis.
Oh,
I didn't want to turn 40 all through my 30s because my scales have got my name and my age on them.
Right.
It flashes up when I get on.
Yeah.
So when I was 30 and I'm looking at the 3, that's okay. I'm not worried about the second number.
Exactly.
But as soon as the 4 come up, I lost it. I spiraled. I was just,
really, huh?
Yeah.
It really hit you, the 40.
Yeah, it doesn't make me feel comfortable.
No, I think for me hitting 60 is gonna knock on my tush. But how is the because you're 40 for a jockey, you're still riding like you're in your 20s. You're riding strong. You're hard. How do you find your body has handled A, the falls that you've had, and B, from the trauma obviously, and B, with age. I mean, as we age, obviously our bodies, they change, and we tend to have to work harder at it to stay healthier and to stay fit. So how are you finding, because last year you struggled quite a bit with your body and, the pain and some of the issues that you had. Can you touch a little bit on that?
So I've been really lucky throughout the majority of my career. Yep. I've had a lot of falls. I think I've had 18 or 19 falls or something, and I've had fractures here and fractures there, but I've never really had an extended period out of the saddle, thankfully, luckily enough. But the last 3 years, I've had a series of bad injuries it's just been really difficult, and none more so than the one in the International Sprint December 18 months ago, where I broke 7 ribs, I had 5 fractures in one foot, fractured wrist and fractured nose. The fractures heal quite quickly. They're not a big problem, but the muscle and ligament problems that come with that, because I had the fractures in my foot, but they weren't too bad. So I wasn't on crutches, and I probably couldn't anyway with my ribs and my wrist. I was still walking around. So when I was walking, I was walking on the outside of my foot. So biomechanically, you're not walking correctly. And by doing that, I didn't even realise I was doing it, but it was putting my hip flexor and my hip all out of place, and it's taken a long period of time. As well as that, we had COVID, so I couldn't go out and get treated properly and get on top of it. So it was sort of building up and festering, but it got to a point where I couldn't even walk anymore. It was so painful. So then I had to start all the physio and do all these things to try and loosen it up and relieve it and make it more supple and, just get the movement and the feeling back in it. When I was riding, it was like someone had a knife and they were sticking a knife into my groin, into my hip flexor. It was causing problems with my lower back, and it was just really, really painful, like getting down in that position to ride. So it's just been a long process to clear that up. As well as that, I've got the bulging disc in my lower back, which comes and goes a little bit. I've got a bulging disc in my lower neck from that same fall as well. So that flares up, and then it causes the stiffness in the neck and the shoulder. I get facet bones in my back that sort of rotate, and they're a problem. I get ribs that continually pop out. So I've got to see the chiropractor all the time to stay on top of that and get them put all back into place. But it's been a long journey, a long process. But I feel now like I've finally had the 5 weeks off and gave my body the break. I feel now I've come back, and although it's a little bit sore, I'm hoping it's not going to be a problem, and you can just sort of move forward a bit more ease. And how did it affect you emotionally, though? Like, I mean, it's one thing to say, yes, I've had the breaks and I've had the falls, but there's an emotional factor to that. How did that affect you emotionally? Because here you are, it's like you're fighting your body every day. You're trying to get to a place where you want to feel like Zac again, and you're hitting all these walls as you're going along. So how did that affect you emotionally? It's really frustrating, because if you break a bone, it's only going to take a certain amount of time to heal, and then you're okay. But with the muscles and the ligaments, and you don't really know what's going to happen. You don't even know if they're ever going to be good again. And as much as you try, so I'd ride, and I couldn't even walk home. I'd hobble home, and I'd spent the next 2 days at the physio patching myself up to get to the next race meeting. And there were times where I had to take mornings off track work and things like that, just to try and give my body a bit of a break to help get to the next race meeting. So it was really frustrating, not knowing when I was going to be able to get over all of that. And to a certain degree, I'm probably still in that position. But, you know, it is what it is. My belief is if I'm at 80%, I still think I'm good enough to compete with the other guys at 100%.
Right.
But if I dip below that, then that's when I need to step back a little bit. So even though I'm not 100%, or I wasn't 100%, I still felt like I could get the job done and do what was required. And I've got this thing in me where I want to prove a point, right? Even though I am sore, I still want to prove I can get the job done, or I want to do it.
Absolutely. When you're done with Hong Kong, whenever that may be, I will not ask you that question, although a lot of people want to know. When you're done with Hong Kong, do you think that you will ride back in Australia, or do you think that you want to finish on a high in Hong Kong and then maybe do something else with horse racing when you get there?
So my plan was always to finish up in Hong Kong.
Yep.
You know, I think although Australian racing has gone ahead in leaps and bounds, and it is quite attractive back there now, and of course, you know, I'm sort of getting drawn back.
Yeah, they're pulling
there
you
a
back
little
in.
bit. There,
yeah.
people trying to get me back in there, and even spending time back home. It's
right.
Pulls on the heartstrings a little bit. But Hong Kong is where I wanted to be successful. I wanted to test myself against the best on the world stage in this environment. I always felt like when I retired from here, then that would be the end of the road for me. And I still do think that. You know, I never say never to anything.
No.
There are always sliding door moments where things change. So there might be a point where I go back and base myself in Australia for a short period of time. It's not what I'm thinking of doing at the moment. I want to complete the task I have ahead of me here, complete my journey here, and then go back home and enjoy what I've done. Yeah.
Reap the rewards of everything.